Revenge films.
I'm Terry, 23 years old. I live with my parents, older brother, and younger sister. My family was very strange, to say the least. My parents loved and spoiled my brother Miles and treated me and my 6 years younger sister Miffy like slaves. Since we were little, we did all the housework while my mom, a housewife who stayed home all day, did nothing. They forbid us to play with our friends or take lessons. All Miffy and I did was do housework and cook. If we made a mistake or cut corners, Mother said, "Women get married one day, so if you don't master this woman's work, you're no use." Then she locked us in the closet. When my parents and Miles were eating out or having delicious food at home, we were fed only leftovers or kitchen scraps, and I can't recall ever eating until full. I developed the idea of studying hard, getting a good job, and leaving that house with Miffy. I studied very hard to achieve that, and I got into one of the very best universities in the country. It was one of my biggest dreams that came true. Reputation was so important to my parents that they bragged about my school to everyone, but to me they said, "We don't have the money for your tuition. You should work and pay for it yourself." I juggled schoolwork, a part-time job, and housework for 4 years. During those years, I barely slept, but I made it, and I got a job as a system engineer after graduation. When I told them, "Now that I'm an SE, I'll get busier," Mother said, "SE? What the heck is that, a part-time job?" She didn't understand or have the slightest interest in my job. I was just eager to get used to my work, save money, and leave the house as soon as possible. I worked overtime every second I got to become good at it. In the meantime, Miffy, who was in high school, had to do more housework because I wasn't home much and couldn't hang out with friends. She was constantly under Mother's watch. I couldn't wait to save her from the hell house, so I tried to be frugal and saved up the most of my income. My parents still thought I was doing the part-time job and didn't suspect when my income wasn't much. When I saved up almost enough, I noticed my balance was decreasing. Then I found an unfamiliar transaction. When I called the credit card company, there was a charge for $500 at a high-end restaurant. I immediately suspected my parents, but I always kept my card in my wallet and I didn't know when and how they used it. The only possibility I could think of was that they snuck into my room while I was asleep, took the card out, and put it back later on. So I put a little bell on my door so I would wake up when some intruder comes in. A week later, I woke up to the sound of the bell, but I pretended to be asleep with one eye open. Just as I suspected, it was my mother. She made sure I was sleeping, rummaged through my purse, took out the card, and left. I didn't want it to happen again, so after an hour, my mother went to bed. I snuck into her bedroom and found her wallet with my card in it. I got it back safely, and I fell asleep imagining what would happen next. The next evening, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered it, it was the owner of a famous local restaurant. It looked like my mother, assuming my card was in her wallet, took my father and Miles out to dine there. A full-course meal and drinks for only 3 adults easily came to over $2,000. They made a reservation for the menu in advance, but realizing there was no card to pay for, the owner was furious and about to call the police. And without choice, she told him my phone number. Hearing that story, I thought the restaurant was entitled to get paid, so I stepped out in the middle of the work. When I got to the restaurant, my mother was mad and said, "Where did you put your credit card?" "I got it back from you, of course. You've been stealing and using my card. I want you to pay me back for the last month, too." And she said, "You're going to leave the house and get married one day, but we kept you all these years. You can pay us back now, and this is not enough at all." That was my mother's logic. Then Miles said,
"You're my sister. You ought to devote yourself to your brother. If you're not paying for this, we'll kick you out of the house."
My father agreed to that too. "Fine, I'll leave the house and I'm taking Miffy. Just pay me back for the one you used." Who do you think will do the housework if you two leave? I don't give you permission for that. You two will stay in the house forever as maids." Then she took my purse out of my hands and looked for my wallet. I know my mother very well, so I hid my card in the closet in my bedroom. She was so irritated about not being able to find the card. "Where is it? Pay it already!" Just when my mother raised her voice, the ever-so-quiet restaurant owner stopped her with an even louder voice.
I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but what kind of parents are you anyway? Give your daughter back the money now, or I'll call the police for fraud.
The three panicked and my father said,
I see. We'll pay for it, but please don't call the police. Give your daughter back the money right here, right now, in front of me.
My mother was urged to get cash at an ATM and reluctantly came back and asked the owner, "I'll pay for the bill, won't that settle it?" The owner just said,
Do you want me to call the police?
My mother apologized to the owner and paid the bill and paid me back for what they used on my card last month. Then she spat out, "I'll never come back here!" and left. I said thank you to the owner many times. He said,
You must have had a hard time at home. Get out of their house soon and live freely.
He then patted my shoulder and encouraged me. At that moment, I decided to leave the house. 2 weeks later, without words, I left the house, taking Miffy with me. I rented an apartment near my work and started a new life with Miffy. When we didn't come home, Mother called me immediately. I ignored that phone call and I replaced Miffy's old phone that my mother brought with a new one. She still texted me, "Tell me where you are. Come home right now or I won't forgive you too." She was persistent, so I blocked all and created a no-contact safe environment for us. Living with Miffy was surprisingly peaceful, and we became much more normal and happier. Soon Miffy was smiling all the time and had more friends. She became more like a normal teenager. We were finally away from toxic parents. Life without them is amazing. I can finally appreciate my life. As for the rest of the family, now the maids are gone, the house became a trash mountain in no time. Miles was relying on my parents financially, but now the cooks are gone. The cost of the daily meals piled up fast, and Miles got no more allowance from our parents. He was also the first to borrow the money elsewhere. My father couldn't catch up with the payment and asked the relatives for help. But it didn't take long until the relatives stopped lending money to them, and the three were isolated. At that moment, Mother and Miles were doing part-time jobs to pay off the debt. Miffy and I would never go back to that home, which is now an infamous trash mountain house in the neighborhood.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.